Hi and welcome to tonight's Facebook Live on inspiration, on whether we live our life seeking to inspire others or whether we look to be inspired by others. I've had quite a few questions on this topic, so I'm looking forward to it. Hi Glynis, Haresh, Sonia, it's good to have you here. Maria, Bron, Amanda, goodness, everybody's coming in thick and fast. Pia, Ola, it's in an interesting time and period. Hi Doris. It should have taken place last week, and my apologies to all of you for not being available last week. Hi Sin. It was Tony's 70th birthday and I was inspired to make that my priority. I had intended to do the Facebook Live, but we had a house full of people. And I thought, no, this is not about making it challenging. This is about allowing life to flow. And it wasn't flowing, trying to make it happen. So I accepted it wasn't going to happen. Hi Caroline, hi Tanya. And sometimes we need to do that. Inspiration comes in many forms. And for me, part of inspiration is priority, which may seem a different connection, but it's not. And I'm not talking about my priorities. Spirit will inspire us all of the time. And so inspiration can take two forms. It can be that which our emotional body inspires us to do, or it can be that which our soul inspires us to do. My emotional body said to me, you've made a commitment and you ought to honor it. My soul said, you have a bigger picture here and you need to honor that. And it's true, because whatever we do, it's all about people. And so I wasn't available last Monday, and that may have inconvenienced people, and if so, I'm sorry if it did, but I'm not sorry for the choice that I made. When we're inspired for many reasons. Hi Karen, hi Juliet. And always, if it's coming from the soul, it's for the highest good of all concerned. If it's coming from our emotional body, it can be our good, not the highest good. Hi Clara. Amanda says she's experienced, I'm going to try and read this, I can't read it all. She's experienced some of those choices lately. She's familiar with the soul versus personality challenges. I think we all are. And I think inspiration is one of the areas where it can come a cropper, or it can come into its own. So let's look at what inspiration is, first of all, before we decide whether we're doing it for ourselves or we're doing it for other people. Glynis asked, what's the difference between inspiration and motivation? Because often people use the words interchangeably, and that's true. For me, inspiration is an inner, motivation is an external. If you like, inspiration leads us, motivation pushes us. That may be oversimplistic, but it's the way that I've always understood it. When we're motivated, often that's a mental, it comes from here. Whereas when we're inspired, it comes from our heart, or as I said earlier, it comes from our emotional body, depending on the circumstances. Whatever it is, it encourages us to be a little bit more, to strive to go further, to reach a little bit higher, to give a little bit more, to be more. And so inspiration, when it's self-directed, leads us to be coming, to be coming. Whereas motivation pushes us into be doing. So for me, there's a clear distinction between inspiration and motivation, and often that distinction determines whether we are focused on inspiring ourselves or whether we're focused on inspiring ourselves and others, or only others. I don't know how other people look at it. For me, if the inspiration is only for me, then it's emotional body. Because soul is about service. It's about the highest good of all. If it's only about others, then it's emotional body. Because it's about being there, sacrificing for others. For it to be soul, it needs to be both. It starts with me, and through me moves out into my world and into what I'm able to offer and share with other people. Sonia asked, what's the difference between, or similarity between, inspiration and intent? For example, if I'm inspired to be kind every day, it also feels like an intent. It's not the same. The inspiration says, practice kindness every day. You're inspired to do it. And I'll answer Glynis's question about commitment in a moment. Inspiration isn't action. We're inspired to do something. It doesn't become grounded, it doesn't become real until we take action. And the action comes from setting the intent to do it. There's another question that Bronwyn, Orla and Glynis all talked about in connection with this, because they're all three very similar. Sometimes we can be inspired to do something and yet it doesn't happen. And why doesn't it happen? It doesn't happen because we don't set an intent to begin. So we might feel that we want to lose weight. We're inspired because we've seen a beautiful dress and we want to be able to wear it. And so let's lose weight tomorrow. I'll start it next week because this week's pretty busy. Perhaps my weight's not too bad. So I could leave it until the end of the month because I've got a lot of birthday parties coming up this month. That kind of rationale means we never set an intent. And if we don't set the intent, there's no action, and the inspiration cannot be translated into an energy out in the world. Now, Glynis said, where does commitment come in if it does? Commitment does come in. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So don't let me forget the commitment bit, Glynis. Orla asked, how do inspiration and enthusiasm work together? Uncomfortably is probably the simplest way to describe that, uncomfortably. When we're inspired, it's about being guided, being led, as I said earlier. Even if it's our emotional body, we're being led. Enthusiasm is pure emotional body. So we might be inspired to meditate every day. And we might think that's a fantastic thing to do, so we'll do it. We're very enthusiastic. We want to see what's going to happen. Often what happens is that because it's an inspiration to meditate, there's a space we need to access first. And so we might meditate for a week and not feel that anything really exciting is happening or wonderful. And our enthusiasm might start to drop. If that idea to meditate came from our emotional body and the enthusiasm drops, we'll find that we suddenly become very busy. We're not able to set aside the time, changes occur. if the inspiration to meditate comes from the soul, even though the enthusiasm drops, we'll continue to do it. And that's where commitment comes in. So we're inspired, we set an intent, and then we commit to fulfill that intent to the best of our ability. And if something happens and it's not possible to fulfill that intent in the moment, we accept it, knowing that we'll come back to it the following day. So it's important for us to understand that inspiration is not just a brainwave that flicks on and we've got to do it or we won't do it, and there's a judgment around it. Our soul is inspiring us all the time. And so I reckon that we're probably being inspired 10 times a day, and out of those 10 times a day, possibly 3 or 4 are the ones that really make an impact. And out of those 3 or 4, there's possibly 1 or 2 that really strike a chord. That's our soul and our guidance trying to help us, trying to inspire us to keep moving forward. So, Glynis says, creative types and writers often bemoan the fact that they're waiting for inspiration and never get started. Well, they're not waiting for inspiration. They're not waiting for inspiration. If they sit and wait for a light to go on, they're talking to themselves. They're not connecting to their soul, and they're not connecting to guidance. Because if they were, the moment they sat down, tuned in and said, okay, here I am, the words would flow. Glynis says, so lack of motivation may in fact be lack of commitment. Absolutely. But it depends what your inspiration is. Is it an inspiration or is it a motivation? I would rather focus on an inspiration than a motivation. So if I sit in meditation and as a result of that meditation I come out and I feel inspired to do something, then I will set an intent and I look at how I can make that happen. I don't think of what it is I'm to do. I allow that to come to me in meditation because that's my soul guiding me. So when, as Orla says, we feel inspired to do something, how can we keep that inspiration going? What gets it on its way? The intent. Inspiration, intent, commitment. Orla also asked, is living an inspirational life the simplest way to inspire others? It depends what you mean by an inspirational life. There are people who seek to be inspired because they don't believe that they have within them what's enough to lead them forward. So they're always looking for messages from outside. Oh, that's telling me I need to do this. They're not connecting to their inner knowing and allowing the soul to speak through that. Inspiration starts within through that connection to spirit. If you wait, if you feel you have to keep your inspiration going, then it's not soul motivated, it's emotional body motivated. I guess for me the simple answer is, if I sit and meditate, if as I'm going through my day something pops up and I feel that sense of inspiration, then I'll act on it. And I like to act on it because I know that it's come up for a reason, and there's a benefit, not just for me, but for those I'm working with as a consequence. I don't sit looking for inspiration. I sit connecting to spirit. And then the inspiration comes that way. I hope that makes sense. I don't know any other way to explain it. Haresh asked, how do we find our inspiration? We don't. We sit and meditate and we allow. If we're sitting and allowing spirit to talk to us, then we will always be inspired. If we're looking for what we need to do to get going, then it's about us. It's about our personality. It's not about our soul. Are our inspiration and purpose connected? Often, but not always. Sometimes we can be inspired to do something that's nothing to do with our purpose, but which may assist somebody else's. So what would be an example of that? Supposing I'm a healer, but I'm sitting talking to somebody about science. You wouldn't expect that a healer would have much to say about science. But sometimes just by sitting and listening to somebody talk and being a sounding board, you help that person and that inspires them. You haven't necessarily done or said anything. Just being there and engaging while they work it out for themselves might be enough to inspire them to move forward to the next stage of whatever it is they're working with or working on. And how do we align, Haresh asks, our inspiration and the purpose? We don't. We don't, because if we sit and meditate and listen, it happens for us. Everything else becomes an effort. If we're trying to do something, then we're saying to Spirit, we know better. So why would you try to align them? You wouldn't. You align yourself, yes. And through that alignment, what happens is that you then are inspired, your purpose opens up, things start to occur. It's magical. It really is magical. Sonia asked, how do we make our inspiration real? Through action. It's that simple. It's not real until we ground it in form. So for me, doing what I do, I was inspired to do what I do. Sonia asked, what's your inspiration, Helen? I was inspired to do what I do and to be what I be. And it's not always easy. And you're not always liked, and you're not always appreciated, and you're not always disliked, and you're not always disrespectful. It's a mixed bag. You're working with people, and there's people come in all shapes and sizes. But my inspiration was to do what I do. And so every day I know what I've planned for that day in order to fulfill that. Within that, however, I keep going because I see the changes in people. What inspires me is when the light switches on inside somebody and I see that they get it. That, more than anything, is probably the best inspiration for me, because I see their connection to Spirit open up, and I see how when they allow that and work with it, it's not just magical, they're so excited, and away they go. So that's my inspiration, seeing others learning and growing and continuing to be a part of it for while ever that's appropriate and required. Sonia also asked, is there spiritual inspiration? Yes. As I said at the beginning, we can be inspired emotionally, and if we are, it's usually about us. We're inspired to change our job or change our car or go and meet somebody or write a book. That usually starts with the emotional body. If it's part of the spiritual path that we've chosen, then it takes on a life of its own. And whatever you're being inspired to do, you can see benefits others. If it doesn't benefit anyone, it's not coming from your soul. That doesn't mean that your personality is bad. It just means that your personality's job is to take care of your personality. Your soul's job is to look at what your purpose is and to see where you fit in the divine plan and try to inspire you to keep doing things to make certain that you stay on track, and that happens. So spiritual inspiration are the promptings that come from the soul or from your intuition or your guidance. And that's why for me it's so important to keep a journal, because when you write it in the journal, you can go back and look at it later and say, oh yeah, that came then and I acted on it and this is what's happened since, or that came then and I got really busy and I didn't do anything with it and now I wish I had. Not from a judgment perspective, but to be able to see how and where it operates for you to help you. Mary Ann says it reminds her of the little engine. I think I can, I know I can. Yes, it does. It's not fake it until you make it, however. And I don't believe in faking it until you make it. If you're inspired to do something, then keep following that inspiration. In meditation, ask, is there more? Is there something other or else? Don't pretend you've got it if you haven't. Because inspiration is about a process, not an outcome. Motivation's about an outcome. So that's another difference. Do we need words to inspire others? No, as I said earlier, just by being there and listening, we can help them. And being a role model, embodying what inspires you, can often be the greatest inspiration you can be to somebody else without preaching or teaching. Amanda said that she finds she has more inspiration when her frequency is at a higher level. Could I comment on the connection between inspiration and our frequency? Yes, because let me come to the bit first about when the frequency is at a higher level. If we're aligned, if as we go through our day-to-day, our focus and our intent is harmlessness, then we will allow what inspires us to flow through us and out into our world. That keeps our frequency high, no question. If we're inspired by our emotional body and we lose enthusiasm or it doesn't appear to be happening, then as the enthusiasm drops, our frequency can drop. So inspiration comes from both the soul and the emotional body, but it's sustainable only when it comes from the soul. If it's coming from the emotional body, it will go up and down like a yo-yo depending on what's happening to us. And that means that it's not finite, it's not fixed. You can't put it in a box, you can't market it or sell it, because it's personal. And it's about a connection to something outside of the physical, that when we bring it in and use it, empowers, enhances, and develops our physical. If we're never inspired, for me it would be like living in a room where there's a light that's never switched on. Inspiration for me is the light at the end of the tunnel. We're going through a tunnel all of the time, not in a negative way, but we're going through a birth, we're going through a learning. And so that light at the end of the tunnel, it's kind of like the guiding star that the three wise men followed. The final question that I was asked, I'm just going to talk about it in a minute. If you've got a question that I haven't answered yet, please type it in now. One thing I will confess, people write notes, posts, but there's only a bit of it shows up on the screen and I haven't yet worked out how to see the rest of it. So you'll have to excuse me if I don't address fully what you've said. Obviously, I'm not as computer literate or savvy as I thought I was. So the final thing that I want to talk about is a question that on the surface doesn't appear to connect to inspiration. It's about wish fulfillment. When we ask for specific things and they don't occur, why don't they? My answer would be that what we're asking for, we've been inspired to ask for by our emotional body. If they've come from our emotional body, there's a temptation to believe that because we've been inspired about it, it's just going to happen. We don't need to do anything. That's not true. We need to set an intent, we need to make a commitment. Sometimes, for example, we might want a relationship. We might feel that we're inspired now to have a relationship. If that's you, and you feel that this year's the year for you to develop a relationship, then one of the things I would ask you to do is, first of all, set the intent to be open to the relationship that Spirit has in mind for you, which is not always the relationship that you have in mind for yourself. And then look at if there's actually space in your life for that relationship. If you met somebody tomorrow, would you be able to give time to building that relationship? Or would you be so busy that there wouldn't be enough energy within you left over to devote to building that relationship? Wish fulfillment for me is more about emotional inspiration that may or may not have an outcome. And if it does, it's because there's an intent and there's a commitment to it. And if it doesn't, it's because either the enthusiasm for the idea ran out, or a bigger or better inspiration popped up for us. And so we let go of that one. We let go of the energy. So if there are any other questions, if there's something anybody wants to ask that I haven't covered, please let me know. And if not, I can see Caroline saying, in being inspired from within, I can't see the rest of it. I can't see the rest of the message, Caroline. So can you just type one sentence posts and so I can read it, please? In being inspired from within. I thought that was the one about words. No, doesn't look like I'm getting one sentence bits from Caroline, so I can't answer it. But I'm pretty sure she was asking about the fact of whether just being who we are, being in our energy, might be enough. I can't see it. So if we're inspired, we can become an inspiration for others just by being who we are, or by saying the right thing at the right time for that person's journey. If we're not inspired, if for some reason we don't feel that there is that inner dialogue occurring that allows that inspiration, look at what you're prompted to do during the day. Thanks, Bronwyn. I think Caroline's saying that I've touched it. So you sit in meditation. You may not feel that you're inspired to do anything in particular. But as you go about during your day, start to pay attention to the things that you're prompted to do that you wouldn't have thought of at the beginning of the day. Because when we're prompted, that's inspiration also. And is that prompting coming from your emotional body, or is that prompting coming from your soul? The more that we know where it's coming from, the more we understand the source, the more effectively we can work with it. You know, for me, inspiration's fun. It's fun because I never know what I'm going to be prompted to do next. And so a side benefit of inspiration is that it teaches us two things. Patience, because sometimes we're not being inspired in the ways that we think we should be, but it also teaches us spontaneity, because if we act on what we're being inspired to do in the moment, we may have to step outside of this beautiful plan that we've got for the day that doesn't necessarily have space for inspiration. And when we do, the energy of the rest of the day flows even more effectively. So I hope that's helped. I hope the delay was worth it. Hang on, what song are you saying? When you are prompted to do something, you set an intent, then you took action, it still does not work, then what? Ask yourself where the intent came from. Did it come from your emotional body? Or did it come from your soul? Kinsey's asking, how can we plan for inspiration? And we don't. True inspiration comes from the soul in the moment. What we do is we go about our day-to-day doing everything that we believe we're there to do. And as and when we need to be given that extra prompt or boost to take us to the next stage, inspiration will strike. So inspiration in this sense, Kinsey, is different, for example, to an author sitting down to write a story. It's a different kind of inspiration. I'm talking about inspiration that's about service, that's about being a light in the world. If, as part of my service, I decided I was going to write a book, that would be my inspiration. If I sat in meditation and said to Spirit, I'm thinking of writing a book, if this is a good idea, show me. And I get a phone call from a publisher saying, I've heard that you're thinking of writing a book, we want to talk to you. Then suddenly it's not about what I'm thinking, it's about what Spirit's thinking. And if I say yes, at that point, whatever idea I might have had for my book may change into what Spirit wants the book to be about. Flexibility, spontaneity. Inspiration isn't instinctual. Yes, Elaine, inspiritation. Inspiration, inspiritation. I think that's very clever. Spirit's at the center of it all. We came here to be the best that we could be. So Spirit will always try to inspire us to do things that bring that about, or to practice things that develop that. When, as a consequence of that, our thoughts become inclusive rather than exclusive, so we're looking at how our actions, what we're inspired to do, the impact that's going to have on others, then we're living an inspirational life because we're allowing Spirit to lead. When it becomes inclusive, it's no longer the emotional body speaking. When it's exclusive, it is. In all situations, if it's to be, it begins with me. So unless I'm allowing myself to be inspired, it's going to be pretty difficult to be a source of inspiration for other people. Okay, I think we might be done. If you've got any more comments or questions, then post them below. And if you've got any topics that you would like me to talk about, don't forget that inside the Insight Essentials group, there's a file where you can write down the topics that you'd like to have us do a Facebook Live on. I've also posed the question that it would be good to start discussions going in the Insight Essentials Facebook group inside the Facebook page. So let's start talking about that too and seeing how we can inspire each other to work together. Thank you. Good night.